Hey, Shalom Shalom Mishpachah. Welcome to another edition of Ray Bash's Ramblings. I'm your host, Rabbi Yehuda Ben Shomer, and this is part 2 of a video that I've done, several months ago perhaps, called Sexual Sins, and this is kind of a part 2 of this. Now, let me just say first and foremost that I am not making any excuses, nor am I justifying in any way, shape, or form the heinous sexual crimes that people commit, especially those who claim to be of any particular religious persuasion. But I have reasons for them being that way. First of all, they're fallen human beings like everybody else in this world, who have temptations, who have natural, God-given sexual desires that just happen to be channeled in a negative, sinful, wrongful way. But a lot of people will discredit religious figures such as Catholic priests, certain TV evangelists like Jim Bakker, Jimmy Swaggart, who were caught with prostitutes and things of this nature. And they'll say, well, they weren't no man of God to begin with. They weren't a man of God in the first place. Oh, they're just hypocrites. They're just con men. They're just false. Well, stop and reconsider. Like I said, I'm not justifying their sin. I'm not justifying their crime. I'm not excusing what they did. It was wrong. It was sin. It needs to be dealt with. It needs to be punished. It needs to be dealt with between that person and God. But people think that just because people commit sexual sins means that they do not have the spiritual aptitude or capacity to be one with God, to be close to God. I'm going to argue on the contrary that they have a great potential to be close and intimate with God. Why is this? If you notice, great spiritual leaders in the scriptures had problems with sexual sin. David, Solomon, Jacob, I can go on and on. They all had problems with their sexuality and with sex and with women, and they often fell into situations or sexual sin which caused great problems for their family, for their ministry, for their lives, their closeness with God, etc. If you read throughout the scriptures, sex and the oneness of sex is symbolic of spiritual oneness with God. This is even true in paganism. They were temple prostitutes, male and female, that when you were having sex with this priest or priestess of this pagan religion, supposedly you were being intimate and you were connecting with and being one with that pagan deity. So even in paganism, the illusion of sex and oneness with a deity or with a divine being is prevalent. But even in the scripture, you read all throughout how sex is equivalated with spiritual oneness with God, with intimacy. The Song of Solomon is all about that. So people who commit sexual sin or have a problem with sex have a great spiritual capacity to be a great spiritual aptitude to be one with God, to be intimate with God, to be closer to God than other people are. Because of this desire for oneness. It's just that desire for oneness, that desire for fulfillment and being one with something greater and higher than yourself is channeled in a wrong and false way. Now see, guys, especially men, guys are hardwired different than women. Women have sexual feelings and get intimate on an emotional level, through words, through romance, through touchy-feely. Where men, their emotional iron doors unlock and open up when they have sex. This is not all the time, of course, because sex is also portrayed in the wrong way or done the wrong way with pornography and things, and that oneness isn't there. It's just flesh and carnal nature that is all at work there. But that's why some men have been known to weep and to cry when they're having sex with their wife, because those emotional floodgates open up and they feel one with their wife. They can feel emotions and be able to communicate with their wives on an intimate, emotional level when they're having sex with their wives. They express their love and their romance more so when they're in the physical act of sex, more so than any other time in a man's life. And so it shows that men who have sexual issues have a romantic side to them, have an emotional side to them, have a spiritual side to them that they can open up because they have that capacity to link up and to be one. And just the fact that the scriptural patriarchs and of Scripture, many of them had problems with sex and sexual issues. Well, this begs the question, did Yeshua have sexual temptation? It doesn't specifically say in the Scripture. Of course, there's these conspiracy theorists and these whacked out people who are anti-religion and want to say that Yeshua got it on with Mary Magdalene. But even though the Scriptures doesn't say, because Hebrews says that he was tempted in all points as we are, I know for sure that Yeshua was tempted sexually. If you'll notice, many of the men of Judah, David, Solomon, those who were of the tribe of Judah, specifically had problems with sexual issues. Even the apocryphal, pseudepigraphal document, the Testament of Judah, will even testify to this fact, because Judah in his book, Judah goes into how he had problems with sex, regarding being fooled by Tamar and all this kind of stuff, and how sexual sin got him into a lot of trouble. So Yeshua, being from the tribe of Judah, I believe that he inherited this spiritual temptation, so to speak. But he was perfect. He didn't succumb to it. He didn't fall into it. He overcame it. But the fact is, he was tempted with it. So men who have sexual problems and sexual issues, to me, that shows that they do have an immense capacity. They're not shallow, crass, fleshly, carnal people, but they do have the capacity. They do have the aptitude to be great spiritual leaders, to be spiritually one. It's just that those emotions, those desires, are channeled in a wrong and fleshly way, and they're not channeled in a correct way, and that's why many of them fall into sin. Again, I'm not excusing sexual sin in any way, shape, or form. I'm just giving you an explanation and a reason for perhaps why some religious and spiritual leaders have fallen sexually and have fallen into sexual sin. So when I see a man of God who has fallen sexually, I don't lambash him. I don't point my finger and wag my finger and, oh, what a hypocrite. He was fake. He was never real to begin with. I think to myself, man, he just had a struggle that he couldn't go to anybody with, that he couldn't talk to anybody about. He had a struggle that most of us men have struggles with, but he didn't have a correct outlet or correct instruction on how to unleash that. He didn't know even how to channel his sexuality in a spiritual way so that he could be more closer and more one with God. But instead, it got away from him, and he strayed from the path, and he fell. But you know what? We're all human. None of us are above that. We all have that capacity to sin. We all have that capacity to fall, and to fall hard. And the closer we are with God, the greater potential is that we're going to fall hard. And the harder Hasatan, the enemy, is going to fight against us to get us to fall in those ways that we are weak at. In those ways that we have the potential to be the strongest for God, Satan is going to exploit that as our greatest weakness. And he's going to try to make us fall. So, just a little food for thought there. Thanks for watching. Shalom and Shavua Tov.